Now back to Smoke on the Water for more Straight Up with Sturge.
All right, welcome back into Smoke on the Water on this Tuesday night here on Straight Up with Sturge on Talk Sports 104.9 FM. And straight to the guest line we go on. We bring in the great Danny Sheridan, USA Today Oddsmaker and columnist and football extraordinaire. Mr. Sheridan, how we doing tonight?
I'll do better if you call me Danny.
All right, Danny, I'm sorry. That's kind of like when somebody calls me Mr. Sturgis and I say, guess what? That's my dad.
I think we were thrown off our game because we didn't have your music tonight for you, Danny, so we were a little off on our game here as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. And, we are in the biggest week. I thought the Georgia game week was big leading up to the first game of the season, Danny, and this week is even bigger here in the upstate. Let's start here locally with Florida State and Clemson Saturday night. What are your thoughts on this game? And are there any trends telling you what may happen or what you think may be the storyline coming out of Saturday night?
Well, there are a lot of trends, but of course the Georgia game was huge, but this game is bigger because it has, as you know, national championship and Heisman implications. Quite frankly, you two would have to tell me. I don't recall a game that had both. I mean, it's possible. I just don't remember one recently. But as far as, trends, and they're certainly important. That's not the final. I mean, I wouldn't base my decision on it. But Clemson really looks like they have all the trends. Coach Sweeney has won, 17 out of his last 18 at Death Valley. Only loss was to rival South Carolina, I believe. The home team in this series the last 6 years has won. I don't recall, and you'd have to help me, I don't think Florida State has won down here, 10 or 11 years? That sound right?
2001. 2001. It's the last time Florida State.
And for those that have more than a rooting interest in college football, Clemson's covered the spread 4 straight times. So that makes, if you lose, that makes it a little more bearable like last year. Clemson led at halftime. I know that I had picked Clemson last year. I think they were about a 14-point underdog. I left at halftime. It was 21-14. I get back, and Florida State scored 35 points. Anyway, Clemson covered, but unfortunately they lost. But I am trying to think. You'd have to help me here. This is probably a good 12 years. I don't think Clemson has lost back-to-back games to Florida State in maybe 12 years. Does that sound right?
That's right. Outside of Clemson's one win in 2006 in Tallahassee, you remember the big James Davis run at the end of the game, it has been home field advantage for either one of these teams over the last 12 years.
Yeah, but to not lose 2 in a row to a rival, that's pretty impressive. And Florida State, obviously, they're very talented. They haven't played anybody. Maryland, I guess, Maryland. They beat Virginia by 1. They beat West Virginia and Connecticut. But Florida State, obviously, if you gave them an edge, you'd have to give them an edge on defense based on what we've seen so far. But, hey, that's more than offset by the home field. And it's a big game, obviously. If Florida State wins, then they'll be on cruise control. They'll be a double-digit favorite over Miami. They'll probably have a major letdown against North Carolina State. Then they finish up with Florida, and Florida beat them last year in Tallahassee. They beat Florida the year before in Gainesville. So it's reasonable to assume that they'll have a real good road to hoe, whereas Clemson, obviously, win this game, cruise control until you play at South Carolina, which is a much more formidable schedule, obviously, than Florida State has. So Clemson, luckily, they haven't had a lot of attrition. I thought they might catch some injuries after Georgia, but done really well. And, again, you won 17 out of your last 18 home games. You're not playing St. Mary's. Pretty impressive. So I wouldn't sell Clemson short, but obviously I just don't know. I don't think anybody does. I know Florida State's good. I know Clemson's good. I know their quarterbacks are good. But, hell, I don't know what kind of team Florida State's had because they haven't been tested. Clemson has been tested. That's a good Georgia team. And they played them pretty much at full strength, had a key suspension. I think the place kicker and the snapper bumbled a 3-point play, but Clemson was the better team that night. They would have won anyway, so they're at least more battle-tested.
And Danny, one of the common refrains, we've been talking about here in the brief time we've had you on and early when Mark and I came on the air, was Clemson, in fact, being the home team. And Florida State obviously has an outstanding quarterback, but nonetheless, he is a freshman and has not been in this kind of environment he's going to see on Saturday night in Death Valley. With that said, I believe the latest lines I saw, and to me it's just kind of shocking, and if I were a Clemson team, I'd have a little disrespect in my mouth the fact that we're a 3-point underdog at home. I think that was the last I saw.
No,
let's be clear.
Correct, Bryce. The reason for that is the betting line is the betting public's perception of how two teams match up. You watch Clemson just go through the motions against Boston College, which I don't blame them. They were running vanilla offense and defense. They're not going to show anything. But the bettor sees that and go, oh, man, they look terrible. And conversely, see Florida State winning, what did they win, 83-0 or something like that?
Yeah.
And that, again, is the betting public's perception of how the two teams match up. If Clemson had blown away North Carolina State, had blown away Boston College, and Florida State had played a close game, the game would have been pick'em. And I think this summer it was pretty close to even. But again, that's the betting public's perception of how two teams match up. Then I guess it's a great motivator. If I'm Dabo Swinney, I'm going to point out, hell, they made us an underdog against Georgia, and we won. Now they're making us an underdog against Florida State. It's a good tool to use.
Now, let's be clear. Danny Sheridan joining us, Oddsmaker for USA Today, sports handicapper. Let's be clear to our listeners. You pick games for your clients in your service on the weekend, so you're not going to come out with a prediction tonight. So let's be clear about that. But
because I don't know if I'll pick this game. It's Tuesday. I don't decide until I'll pick 12 games on Saturday, and then I'll cull them out and probably wind up with 2 to 4 against the spread. I really don't have an opinion on this game. If someone put a gun to my head, I surely would not want to go. I would either pass or take Clemson. I would not want to lay, regardless of the outcome. I don't think you can make Clemson an underdog at home because I think they've proven that they're not. But this is a conference foe. This is, again, Florida State is on a pedestal and got 2 quarterbacks, as you both know, that are Heisman candidates. The only where I wouldn't disagree with you totally on Winston. Sure, he's young, but this kid's playing beyond his years. I think you would agree with that. And I don't know if you said to me you can have Winston or Boyd right now to run either offense. I don't know who I would take.
Now, Danny, the BCS rankings come out next week, which is going to have a huge impact on the back half of this college football season. Looking at Saturday night, Clemson and Florida State, is there a chance that the winner that comes out of this game, and if they run the table this year, can they get in the BCS title game without either a loss of Alabama or Oregon moving forward? That looks like they're going to be 1-2 in this BCS poll next week.
All right. Well, that's a good point. The winner of Florida State Clemson, I've got odds-wise 8 teams, only 8, 7 after this Saturday for sure, because obviously Florida State Clemson can't play to a tie. So the winner of that game, odds-wise, will be like 4th in having my odds to have a chance to win the national championship. The answer to your question is the press has made up their mind. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not going to debate that. Everybody wants to see Alabama and Oregon. If Clemson won 100-0 every game, everybody wants to see Alabama and Oregon. So if they both of them go undefeated, which I don't think will happen, you're right. That's exactly what you'll have. Ohio State is next, odds-wise. They don't play anyone. I still think they'll lose the game. It was a terrible call in the Northwestern game. He clearly got a first down on that fumble with a couple of minutes to go in the game. But those things happen. Ohio State is overrated. I would love to take Clemson or Florida State on a neutral field against Ohio State as a handicapper. And the only other 2 teams that I can see out there, Bryce, Mark, would be, you tell me if I missed somebody, I guess 3, LSU and Baylor. You got to include Baylor only because they could run the table. I don't think they're that deserving. And then you put Louisville in there because they figure to go undefeated. Don't think they will, but that's the way I see it. It's basically Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State next, and the winner, Florida State, Clemson, then a huge drop-off.
Well, let's move on. That's a great segue into the SEC and your preseason pick, how you saw this shaking out, Danny, before the season started. You had Alabama and South Carolina in your SEC championship game, while a lot of folks had Georgia coming out of the East, and I think we'd all agree that Georgia's on life support and essentially out of winning the SEC East now. It's down to a three-team race between Missouri, Florida, and South Carolina. And you also said, and you said it on our show, that if Bama was going to lose, if they were going to lose one game in the regular season, that it would likely, and it would, well, not likely, it would be to LSU. How do you see this shaking out as we move forward from here this weekend?
I still stand by that. As far as Georgia goes, you get Todd Gurley back, and even though they're missing a couple of wide receivers and they're missing Marshall, you get Todd Gurley back, and this is a pretty formidable Georgia team. And when I look at the schedule, if you want me try to be objective, assuming Georgia is not in the dumps and beats Vanderbilt, they got a tailor-made schedule at Auburn, Kentucky. They're probably, with Gurley, they're probably a little bit better than Florida. So I could see them, easily still going in there. And as far as a trendy pick preseason, of course you take Georgia because they have a great schedule, whereas South Carolina, not that they looked pretty good last week. They got to go to Tennessee and Missouri back-to-back. Got to play Mississippi and Mississippi State and Florida at home. I was going to say, and they finish with Clemson, but that won't matter. South Carolina's got a little bit tougher road to hoe. Missouri, even if they had Franklin, I'm not sold on Missouri. I think Florida can beat them. South Carolina can beat them next week. They play both of them at home. And I don't think they will beat Texas A&M. And I'm not so sure Ole Miss could beat them. It's not a knock on Missouri. They definitely surprised me, but beating Georgia last week, I picked them, and I was impressed with it, but not impressed as I would have been if Gurley or a couple other guys would have been in the lineup. But they weren't. And granted, Franklin got injured. The quarterback behind him, pretty good. But I'm not sold on Missouri. I'd say it's South Carolina or Georgia. And Georgia probably has the easy path. Florida's out because they're going to lose to one or both of them. And again, I think Missouri's out because I think they're also going to lose one or two games.
We're speaking with Danny Sheridan, USA Today oddsmaker and columnist, and in general, Mr. College Football. Now, Danny, is there anything, with what you do, you study the game, you look at things. Is there anything that you kind of come across in the first half of the season that has been a surprise to you that you think may be a factor as we move into the second half of the season?
Well, I go week to week, and that's a good question. I don't think along those lines. There have been some surprises. Obviously, Missouri's a surprise. They're a little bit better than I thought they would be. And Vanderbilt's not a shocker, but I thought they might be a little bit better. I can't say that Florida's a disappointment because, my God, they've lost 5 starters, and I think the punter is gone now, or he's been replaced, the place kicker. Florida's been, you talk about a team that's got some injuries, and it's just incredible, but I didn't expect that to happen. I thought they'd be a little bit stronger, and they probably would be. They're still a formidable team. There's no surprise with Clemson. They're a very good team, and I have said it, and I'm sure you have too. It's Clemson, Florida State from preseason on. Miami's got a good team. They're a double-digit underdog when they play at Florida State, and I just don't think they're in the same, not league, that's probably not a good expression, but as I said several weeks ago, and I'm sure you would agree, Clemson and Florida State are SEC battle-tested. They could play in this conference and hold their own. Very good teams, very well coached, too.
Danny, let's move out west, and let's talk a little Pac-10, excuse me. Your buddy Feinbaum said on game day the other day, he went out, and I was shocked to the chagrin of SEC Nation that the Pac-12 was a stronger conference as we sat there in the morning before a lot of things happened throughout the day. Now, obviously, Stanford's loss at Utah, I think, probably removed that argument. But, do you see the Pac-12 challenging as this year moves on as the best league in the country, or is there no doubt?
Minor correction. He's not my buddy. Maybe your buddy. You can have it. And I don't know that, and I say it tongue-in-cheek. I don't know if he was
exactly.
He said that, but before the weekend, ESPN used the odds that I gave them on game day, and they flashed them up there, where it showed 6 top SEC big dogs would be favored over the 6 top Pac-12. And it is Pac-12. I always say Pac-10, but And right now, last week SEC was better. This week they're a lot better. I mean, hell, there are 4 teams in the top 10. They're going to cannibalize each other. 4 SEC teams. Of course, you got Alabama 1, and then you got A&M, LSU, and South Carolina 7, 8, 9. Oregon's number 2, and I think, UCLA, they are a Pac-12 team. They're number 10, so you got 2 Pac-10 teams in the top 10, and the chances are UCLA will lose to Stanford, who lost to Utah last week. And the Pac-10 is very good. Those are decent teams, but clearly heads and shoulders above everyone is Oregon. Then there's a tremendous drop-off, and I think they'll prove that when they go to Stanford, I think November the 7th or the 9th. So, an answer, a garrulous answer. Pac-10 is not as strong as the SEC last week, and certainly not this week.
All right.
One quick question, Danny. I want to ask you about Louisville real fast before we move to your Heisman odds and where you see it right now. But Louisville's just a very, very weak performance last week against really just an awful Rutgers team. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that happen as the season moves on. They play nobody. Do you think that weak loss for the moment has just kind of removed them, or that weak win, I mean, it just looks so bad, has removed them from some of the conversation right now?
I think it's reinforced what you and voters think, that they're very good, but I don't have them in my top 8. They got a lot. They're at least 25-1 or 30-1 to win the national championship. I'm sure there's a scenario where they would get in, but I can't think of one. And when you're a 30-1 underdog to win the national championship, you're not getting in. They have to win. Your point is correct. Rutgers is, what's Rutgers? They barely beat Arkansas. They're not bad, but this is not the dream team that they think they are. And I'd be shocked if they were. First of all, they go lose a game to somebody, and again, they are very good. They are deserving of a major bowl bid. That's it.
All right, Danny, final question for you as we're speaking with Danny Sheridan, USA Today Oddsmaker and columnist. How are things shaping up with your Heisman odds at this point, halfway through the season?
Well, you're definitely heading into this week. First of all, it's quarterbacks. I think 9 of the last 11 winners have been quarterbacks. It's a 6-team quarterback race. Mariota would be the top. He'd be 3-1 against. Right behind him, I have Boyd and Winston, and it's unfair, but whoever shines Saturday between Boyd and Winston, he's going to lock up that number 2 position. And the other quarterback, who's still going to be an excellent quarterback, is going to drop out of the Heisman picture. Maybe, possibly invited to the Heisman final, or the Heisman ceremony. But after Boyd and Winston at 5-1, then I put in Bridgewater at 7-1. Still have Aaron Murray at 8-1. And then my 6th choice would be Johnny Manziel at 10-1. He's probably the most deserving based on what I've seen. But as you know, and we've talked about all year, the Heisman's very political. He's not going to get it. I do think he's improved his position. He may get an invite, providing he has a chaperone in New York City.
And they don't still sell Stella on the street corner.
Stella
Artois. Yeah. That's interesting, Danny.
It's okay to sell them once you graduate. Once you graduate, I think you can do that. But I know one thing. Well, if you're not, I assume he's going to turn pro. And once he makes that announcement after the bowl game, well, you're right. The Heisman is before that. Well, maybe they'll suspend him for 3 quarters. I don't know. Anyway, I enjoyed being on. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you much, Danny. We appreciate your time as always. The great Danny Sheridan. You can follow him on Twitter at Danny Sheridan1. And the next time, Price, I got a little ammunition for him. Turns out that somebody I deal with here in town business-wise was a suite mate of Paul Feinbaum's at Tennessee.
Oh, man.
So I got some bullets for the gun for Danny Sheridan the next time he and his buddy are together.
Yeah, that was some interesting Heisman. Yeah. That's interesting. He's got Boyd and Jameis Winston at code number 2 at 5-1. I mean, obviously, like you said, the loser's likely going to drop out of his, in the race in his mind. But the fact he's got Manziel at 6 at 10-1. A&M's a team that nobody is really talking about.
Listen, he impressed me Saturday night in coming back there at Ole Miss. So.
I mean, right now, in my mind, I can't see. I mean, I'm looking at him and Mariota as the 2 best in the country. right now, I don't know how Mansell doesn't get invited right now. And, I mean, A&M could certainly run the table and be shut out of the SEC title game if Alabama continues undefeated.
Unless the Heisman Trust is worrying about Mansell and his buddies drinking them out of Stella Artois. I agree with you. Hey, before we go out to break, let's take a moment and tell you about our newest sponsor, Spencer Pest Services, located at 951 North Pleasantburg Drive here in Greenville. Their phone number is 232-2406, and you can find them online at spencerpest.com. Listen, Spencer Pest Services can help you with a multitude of problems ranging from pests to termites to rats to wildlife to mosquitoes and even fire ants. And if it becomes an emergency, Spencer Pest Services offers a 24-hour emergency service. Now, Sherry Spencer is a working mother. She understands that people have a busy life. At Spencer Pest, they make sure they show up at the scheduled time and finish the job in a professional and timely manner. They even offer bill pay online at spencerpest.com, so makes it very easy to get squared up with Spencer Pest Services. They are happy to roll out the pest control for a cure because Spencer Pest understands the issues with cancer as they've been personally affected by the disease. They've made it their mission to help find a cure. That's why Spencer Pest Services will donate $50 to the cancer nonprofit of your choice when you sign up for a new service. That's Spencer Pest Services, 951 North Pleasantburg Drive in Greenville. The phone number is 232-2406, and you can find them online at spencerpest.com. Off the break we go. It is 7:43 on this Tuesday night edition of Straight Up with Sturge on Talk Sports 104.9 FM, the flagship station of Clemson Athletics.